welcome to another edition of the Hitting the Hardwood podcast, your home for all the latest Minnesota Lynx and WNBA news, analysis, and coverage. Thank you for tuning into another episode this week. I'm your host, Mitchell Hansen, and this week I am joined by KARE 11 reporter Jana Shortal. Jana is a person that I've personally tuned into and watched for many years. She's great on KARE 11. On social media, she's a great follow on social media. If you don't follow her, please do so. But she's somebody that more importantly, she makes an impact. And I think that says a lot about a reporter. She tells great stories. She tells a lot of emotional stories. She kind of peels back the onion and tells a lot of the stories and the emotional side of who people are. She tells people stories. And that sounds very simple, but it is a very unique skill set to have and a skill to be able to tell those stories to viewers and to people interested. So Jana, I've watched her, like I said, for a while on KARE 11. I've been a follower of her work for a while. And she just happens to be a women's basketball fan, a Lynx fan, and just a sports fan in general. So, she, as like I said, she does cover the human interest side of things, but she meshes that with the sports world and outside of the sports world, but within the sports world, specifically with athletes, organizations, teams, and on top of it all, she admitted in the podcast she's just a fan. She is a longtime supporter of the Lynx. She's a big fan of Lindsay Whalen, which she'll talk about. But she is somebody that has been interested in the Lynx and helps not only propel them and kind of continue to give them the light that they deserve, but she does the same with women's basketball, women's sports, and women's athletes in general. So a lot of fun on this week's podcast. We kind of dive into everything with Jana, and it was a blast to get to talk to her and get to sit down with her. And I appreciate her taking some time and telling us her story, telling us how she goes about the work that she does every day, and everything that she does on breaking the news on KARE 11, which is a great show that you need to tune into. A lot of great work that's being done there and on KARE 11 in general. But we kind of talk about everything, her relationship with Lindsay Whalen, and just her relationship with the Lynx as well. Like I said, she's a fan, as she talks about, but she's somebody that meshes that with being able to report on the Lynx, report on women's sports and women's athletes. So let's jump right into the podcast with KARE 11's Jana Shortal. Jana, how are you doing? Thank you for joining me.
I'm great. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. I was talking to you a little bit before we started recording, and I continuously tried to get a little different perspectives, different voices on this podcast. And you've been a longtime supporter of women's basketball, women's sports, the Lynx as well, the WNBA. So I appreciate you joining, and it's a different perspective than what I've had in the past with just maybe reporters or writers or whatever. So I'm not saying you're not a reporter; you very much are a reporter. But I appreciate you joining, and I look forward to talking a little Lynx basketball and kind of women's sports and everything. But
absolutely, I'm equal parts fan, if not more parts fan than reporter when it comes to the beat of women's basketball and sports in general.
Yeah. So for people that don't know or maybe aren't as familiar with you and your work, if you could just maybe explain who you are and kind of what you do and the world you live in right now.
Absolutely. My name is Jana Shortal. I work for KARE 11 here in the Twin Cities. This is my 20th year on staff and my 7th year. Yeah, 20 years. It's my 7th year as host and reporter and executive producer of Breaking the News. It's a weekly or weeknight show, 6:30 Monday through Friday. We cover equal parts news, weather, politics, sports, anything of interest that leaves a little room for conversation. And this week, it's every day this week, with the exception of this day, I've covered sports figures in town. So that's been a lot of fun, because initially what got me into journalism was my love of sports and wanted to be some kind of sports reporter.
Mm-hmm. Why this field? What initially got you kind of interested in it and also involved in it?
Loved sports since I was a kid, loved playing, loved watching, loved being around it. Grew up in a small town in the Midwest. And in my early teens, probably 13, 14, I recall catching an episode of Sports Center in the morning. And that's when Sports Center had just started. So it was Keith Olbermann and Dan Patrick, those very early days. And I just remember being captivated by how clever it was, and it was funny, and it was sports. So it was really different than the 3 minutes of sports I would catch at the end of the boring newscast my parents would watch when I was little. And I just was gobsmacked and decided right then and there, I want to do that. And no one, teachers, guidance counselors, parents, took that seriously. It's not really a goal for a young kid in the middle of nowhere in 1990, maybe 1990. But that's what attracted me to it at first. And then through a series of good choices and dumb luck, I wound up at a journalism school that happened to be quite good at doing the journalism thing. Mm-hmm. And while there, you realize that sports was really fun, but it was a much smaller group of jobs, for lack of a better term, than what news could offer. And I'm in a newsroom, same way as today. And there's 3 sports jobs and 200 news jobs. And then news actually piqued my curiosity more and more because there was just more variety to it than sports offered at the time. So I wound up in news, but never shook the love of the games I would watch as a fan and be interested in covering as a reporter.
Mm-hmm. Do you have, I mean, you mentioned you've been there 20 years. Do you have a maybe a moment or maybe a couple moments that come to mind for you that kind of stand out, or maybe even personalities that you dealt with that have been kind of atop your list on the things that you've enjoyed covering or doing?
Honestly, I mean, the last 7 years, I would say, have been the most rewarding, the hardest, and most fulfilling in terms of, kind of having the reins of a show I get to call a lot of the shots in and host. I never imagined that for myself, but it allows the flexibility to do a 5-minute story on Kirk Cousins, or a 5-minute story on Lindsay Whalen, or a 5-minute story on something completely different, wastewater, looking in our poop for signs of COVID, all the things that we do, or 5 minutes in a kindergarten class in Eden Prairie, talking to kids on, should we go to space and what do you want to do when we get there? Like all different kinds of things. So they're all memorable for different reasons. So there is not one favorite. I think most people in the general public would think the moment I met fill in the blank name everybody would know was really cool. But honestly, it's ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. That's what is memorable. People out doing the thing, don't realizing how extraordinary they are, at least to me, and telling their story. And that's a tremendous privilege. So those stick out quite a bit. I'm at the point now, 20 years in, where I could be at a Cub Foods and somebody could walk up to me and they're like, you interviewed me when I was 6 and they're now 25 or something like that. That's pretty cool to see where people have gone in their lives, to be able to have both a rear view mirror that's rich and a look forward that's rich is a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. But meeting, it's hard in this line of business because you meet people that a lot of people admire and you want to tell them that they're as great as you think they are. And sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're rude, but I just like to give people the benefit of the doubt that maybe they're having a bad day.
I one thing that stood out to you is, you're talking about they're normal people doing, extraordinary things. I mean, that's epitome of athletes too. A lot of people see them doing these extraordinary things, but they are normal people. They're just like us. They have similar stories, similar lives than the rest of us do. And I think that's the cool thing just about journalism in general, whether it's written form, on TV, broadcast, radio, whatever it may be. Being able to tell those stories, being able to tell people's stories and meet different people. And to me, that's what got me, kind of sucked into it, I guess you could say, about 10 years ago or whatever. Just, I kind of got involved in the sports writing world right when I was in college, and just being able to talk to people, find those different stories, because there is no shortage of extraordinary stories and extraordinary people. And to me, that's my favorite part, is just being able to tell someone else's story is really rewarding too at the same time.
Right. And being able to, this week I've just been in the sports world a lot with 2 very recognizable names in athletics, both here in Minnesota and across the country, with Lindsay Whalen and Kirk Cousins both doing the show this week. And also remembering too that there are people whose job happens to be that of a professional athlete, and those 2 in particular at the top of the game of professional athletics in their respective fields, but that also they have other interests and like to do other things and can talk about that and don't necessarily want to be, heroized all the time for the game they play. And so a lot of the reaction I got to the piece I did with Kirk Cousins was about what I did and didn't ask him, which I didn't ask him about football. We talked about other stuff, and he seemed to have a really good time because I think that doesn't happen all that often. That doesn't say anything about me. It just says, see a side of a person that may make him more likable than how he performs against, the Eagles.
Right. You kind of talked about, Lindsay Whalen a little bit as we're recording this. You just ran a piece on her opening up about her time coming to an end at the University of Minnesota, and obviously you mentioned it. She's one of the best, biggest sports figures in this state, and maybe in in WNBA and in basketball in general. What was it like for you to kind of tell her story? It was a difficult story, I'm sure, for her to kind of open up about and talk about, but to be able to tell that story, and then also to she has that trust in you. Obviously, that's that's why she did the interview with you, because she enjoys you, she trusts you. What is it like for you to kind of take a step back and kind of realize that these athletes, or these bigger figures, do trust you to tell their stories?
Yeah, I think my relationship with her is, at least to me, quite special because, and she and I talked about this yesterday, my time in Minnesota parallels her ascendancy as one of the greatest women's basketball players Minnesota has ever seen. So when I came here at the end of 2003, we were about to go into that time of the most storied Minnesota women's basketball team in history, the one that goes to the Final Four. And at that time, there wasn't a whole lot of interest. They were averaging about 1,500 fans a game. And then by the time Lindsay and her teammates make that run, they're averaging 10,000 fans a game. They were the sports story in town. But there still wasn't a lot of buy-in from the traditional, male-dominated sports media in a way that wanted to go to every single game and be at every single practice. And I nominated myself because I was new to town. I was in my early 20s. I didn't have any friends, any family. I didn't know anybody. And I loved basketball since I was a kid playing on my high school basketball team, albeit I was not very good. I just loved the game. So in a way, Lindsay Whalen and that team were my first friend in Minnesota. And I never lost sight of her and basketball after that, in the way that it really moved me to witness that fan base grow and how that fan base behaved towards that team. I got to go to the Final Four. I went to the game where they beat Duke, that storied moment in Virginia. Nobody thought they would win that game to get them to the Final Four. So I say that all in, I've been covering Lindsay since she was 19 or 20. And now she's 41 and I'm almost 46. And so we had that history sitting in her basement yesterday. She remembers, I remember I covered her when she was drafted into the W in Connecticut, and then when she came home, and then every title season, and then every season after that up until her retirement. Every time she broke her hand, she did that once in college. I did a whole op-ed on it, and then it happened again, and then I did a tearful op-ed again. And she watches the show, so we know each other in that respect. She respects what I do, and I respect what she does. So by the time we get to what happened that day in March, where it makes obvious sense for basketball reasons that the university has to make a change, it's almost like I'm reliving my early 20s and 30s. It's so hard because she succeeded every time. She always won. She would never quit. And then when she didn't come to that press conference the day that she resigned, the rumors started flying. And I remember just wanting to be so protective of her, but also I'm a journalist too. So why in the hell isn't she there? Is there something we don't know? What did you do to her, University of Minnesota? And it was too traumatic for her in those first couple of days to talk to anybody about it. There were legal things that had to be parsed out, and she had to figure out who she needed to be. And that took several months. And then over the last few weeks, there were hints that she was ready. The Lynx had their 25 celebration, and then there was Way Day last week. And then the day before Way Day, maybe it was 2 days before, I reached out, and she seemed like she was ready to spill the tea, to talk about it. But a series of unfortunate events, K-fan, like they always do, They were able to do it first because they didn't have to wrangle up a photographer, and they're wildly respected. And Dan Barrero did an incredible interview with her where she talks about it. And, in this business, it's all about being first and being competitive. But I still really wanted Lindsay to have the space on breaking the news as well, if she still wanted it. And she said she did. So that's why I went to her house yesterday and we told this story. I'm well aware that KFan did it first and that other people covered it over the weekend, but it was important that we get on record too, and that Lindsay could say it the way she wanted to say it.
Mm-hmm. And I hear you guys are going to be co-hosts, right?
Yeah. She is, Lindsay's been a critic, not in the best of ways. She always watches. She reaches out quite a bit. She gets a lot of love on Breaking the News. I'm not going to lie. Everybody and every women's athlete gets a lot of love on BTN because I love them. And yeah, I knew I could joke with her in that way, and it would be funny. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not? If she wants to be on the show, you got to have her on the show. I mean,
I really don't see any reason why not. I feel like I'm going to debut her at the state fair, and a crowd full of people eating Pronto pups, and we'll just roll and see how the chemistry goes. I may miss a pass or two. She might call the wrong play, but
there's no better time and no better venue, I think, than
the good thing about her is that she's a perfectionist, and if I tell her she can't do it, then she won't be any good at it. That's how I get her to sign the contract.
You kind of mentioned, this kind of feeds into my next question of propelling women's sports and telling a lot of women athletes stories, or just kind of bringing that to the light a little bit more. How important is that to you to kind of prioritize that and kind of propel that to further that message and that voice of women's athletes, or women's athletics and women's sports?
I'm in the generation that started to reap the full benefits of Title IX. Title IX didn't just flip the switch the next day and everything was all hunky-dory. It took time for athletic programs of all sports to come to all high schools and at the college level. But still, I'm also, my other foot is in the era of women's sports, not taken seriously by traditional male sports media, especially sports radio, kind of an afterthought for the papers, the TV stations, the radio, like, oh, if there's not anything else to talk about on the Vikings, and I mean anything else, like what color shoes they're wearing, I guess we'll talk about the Lynx in the playoffs. Over time, the Lynx, even to this day still, and Cheryl does it each game, wearing a t-shirt that kind of sends a message in each game under her blazer, which I think is rad. They have been at the forefront of standing on the right side of history. And we see that with the U.S. women's national soccer team. We saw that with the WNBA. We see it in their game, where they make less than many middle-class Americans being the best at what they do. So it was always just the underdog story, a woman in athletics. And then they behaved as though it didn't bother them. They just came out to play this game and do this thing. And that, it just hurts. I'm a woman in the world too. I also live in a world of inequity, although it gets better and better. It's still one where the C-suites are dominated by men, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So like sees like. And I do believe what I saw in that Final Four run team of Lindsay Whalen was some of the most remarkable basketball I'd ever seen. And it only got better after that. And Cheryl Reeve always says to all of the naysayers of the WNBA, I'm going to buy you a ticket. You come to a game, especially go to a game where she's coaching Brunson, Augustus, Moore, Whalen, and Sylvia Fowles. And your mind gets blown. And I did that kind of as a social experiment. I would take different people, because I used to go to all the games back then. And I'm glad I did, because we were witnessing one of the most historic teams that I'll probably ever see in my lifetime. Watch that game and tell me you didn't just witness excellence in sport, something you'd never seen before. Not to compare to a men's game, they're different. But now we see that coming around, that everybody is starting to understand that. And if they don't and still make fun of it, look at the ratings. Look what happens when women's sports go on TV. So it was important to me to be a part of that fight for equality, saying, if we put them on screen, I bet you will watch. And so I wanted to use the space I had I wouldn't put it on screen if I'm like, nah, this isn't very good and nobody's trying very hard. It's a quality product and it deserves the space. And if I get a spot, it's my job to use my platform, in my opinion, to share it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love the game, and I love what women's, I never, in my 25 years in news, unfortunately, I've covered many professional athletes involved in crimes, involved in cheating, involved in saying cruel things. I never, ever in my career had to do that with a women's athlete. It just was not the same. So there was not rudeness about money or anything like that. And so I just wanted to give them an equal shake, at least on the 30 minutes of TV I did.
That's the thing I've noticed with the WNBA and specifically the Lynx is that we're trying to cover them and they want us to cover them. And it's a good partnership that way. They're very open, they're very welcoming. And that bleeds into, the games, and you feel that way when you walk in there. And to me, that's one of the most appealing things. And it just happens to be great basketball too. So it's
you're not doing something that's like, oh, it's a bore. That's not what it is. I mean, and it's unfortunate for them that they already have the product and it still has to be like enticing some to come, but that's okay, because that's where we are in society. But I honestly think today it's better than it's ever been. We saw that rhetoric right after the women's national team lost in the World Cup, earliest exit in years, and it's all boo, 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 boo. Sure, that team has to improve. However, everybody else got better, and that's always been the point, right? The same with the Lynx right now. Are they terrible? No. Are they a dynasty? No. There are incredible teams in the W right now. The W should be bigger. The W should expand. The W should be on prime time and not play in the summer. Like, this is a benefit of everybody getting better. The game is going up, 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 up. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think we could talk for another hour on expansion and marketing and all of that stuff. When it comes to the Lynx, one thing you kind of touched on a little bit, and I know Cheryl's talked about this throughout since I've been covering the team too, that getting that women's basketball, maybe even just specifically Lynx games, getting that on TV, getting that in front of people, getting that in houses, that one thing she always talks about is, I want my son to grow up knowing that this is the norm, that it's not not weird seeing women's athlete or women's sports on TV or going to women's games. And do you think that the Lynx have played maybe a big role in helping change that narrative or change that viewpoint with specifically the younger generation, I guess?
100%. I think there are we can look at big names. I mean, we can look at what Serena Williams and her sister Venus did with tennis, and women's tennis has kind of been ahead of the game in terms of that was for some reason accepted, and maybe it's because it's a singular sport, who knows. But with what the W has become and what the college game has become, I mean, look what Caitlin Clark and look at what Dawn Staley's done in the women's collegiate game. I mean, that Final Four it just blew your mind. It was such good basketball. This next draft class is just like, give me Paige, give me Caitlin, give me Asia. I mean, I can't lose here. But I do think that groundwork was laid with those early dominant teams. I mean, the W has been around a long time, and you think it's like second decade before it really starts to just apex here. And I think here in Minnesota, we were on the front end. It's the same with that team that I keep going back to, that Final Four team with Whalen. The barn was sold out and it was deafeningly loud, like 16 years ago. The Lynx through all those title runs and every year in between. I mean, even sitting with Lindsay yesterday, remembering how many years they went to the finals, and it was packed. You're averaging way more people than the T-Wolves are bringing to the game, and everybody was invested at the game. It takes time for that many people to pass the word to that many people, and for that many people's kids to grow up and start demanding that these sports be on television and that there be no exception. And then you see other things like what's happened in Arizona, right? And I'm going to forget the guy's name, and I always say it wrong anyway. But he took the Suns and the Mercury and said, I'm going to lose money because I have $1 bajillion, and I'm going to put them on over-the-air TV. So as of now, the Suns and the Mercury are going to go on the equivalent of Channel 11 across the state of Arizona. And his bet is if we put them on TV, you're going to watch. Kind of like how I grew up. Baseball was always on over-the-air free TV. And so everybody watched Cardinals game. That's the market I grew up in. He's making that same bet on women's athletics and the Suns in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a smart bet.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, I think if anything, if you put it on TV, people are going to tune in. Like you look at, cornhole on ESPN when they put that on there. Am I going to go try and find and watch that? No. If it's on TV, if nothing else is on TV, am I going to maybe watch it? Sure, maybe. And it's the same thing, I think, with casual fans, that if they're maybe not going to seek out the WNBA, if it is on TV, they'll stop and tune in.
Yeah. If you had a place, I mean, in my dream world, KARE 11 agrees to be the broadcast partner for all Lynx home games, right? And then you market all Lynx home games. And you've covered the Lynx, you've gone to their games. You create, and there's few of these left, a collective live experience. You could tape it and watch it, leave it, or DVR it, but you create a situation where you could live tweet it, where you could do all these things. We have that with football because it's, in essence, your team plays once a week. Mm-hmm. But the Lynx the W season is short enough that I think that you could create a vibe over a collective experience because the fan base is so passionate. And yeah, I would watch that with my son. You bet your bottom dollar. And it would be so fun. But we haven't seen that yet. The biggest complaint about the Lynx, it's different than football, so it's not fair to compare. You can't find them. Even if you were willing to pay for whatever tier of cable, the women's game is harder to get to, even if you have the money to get to it. Mm-hmm. And I think as long as it remains a needle in the haystack in the proverbial sense, we just shoot ourselves in the foot. But I think it's at the point now, and we again saw that with the W, with college, with soccer. This is a capitalistic society, and they're looking at it and like, I can make money off of that. And so you're going to get your advertisers. Social media influencers, women are the highest paid by far more than men because women are more loyal consumers. So if Paige Beckers tells me to wear Old Spice swagger, I'm more apt to get Old Spice swagger. Look at the Taylor Swift fan base. I mean, women have a space in the social media influence world, and that is money. Mm-hmm. So I say that just because money fuels a lot of decisions by people that have it, that can put women in a place to be watched. And so I think those people have taken notice. It's no longer what the armchair quarterbacks like, oh, I hate women can't dunk. Doesn't matter. Like if they make somebody money, they're going to be on your screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. When kind of shifting a little bit to the game itself, have you been tuning in a lot of WNBA season or basketball this year? What are your thoughts on everything that's kind of taken place so far?
My kid's 1.5. I'm sorry, Cheryl. She knows this. I apologize. My behaviors have shifted dramatically in the last 18 months of what I'm able to see. But I read about them every day. And my show comes on right after the sports segment. And so I see the highlights. And again, I read the box scores. I think it's pretty phenomenal that Fee has seemed to come into the role that we all wanted her to come into, especially Coach Reeve, that she's doing it right now. And in spite of, having basically 2 super teams in the W, she keeps grinding. And so do the other players. And I guess my experience with Coach Reeve and covering that team is she respects the grind. If you're playing good defense and you don't give up, that's a good team to Cheryl. And that's a good team to me as a fan. You don't have to win the title every year. Are you playing hard? Great. So I think that they're doing just fine. They're a hard team to read. They don't have that missing piece. We lost Sylvia Fowles. I mean, that was the last piece of that dynasty team. And that was the matriarch of that team. And so now we're back to nobody from dynasty and who are you? And that first piece is Fee. So I think they are doing great. Next year's draft class is incredible. I'm excited to see where we fall in the draft. I think if we get a point guard and Fee gets to be the wing, and then you got Kayla McBride, who is just hungry for it all the time. I really like Jessica Shepard. I think they got a good set of people. Mm-hmm. I think if we get one of those guards, watch out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And just the job, Cheryl's done in transitioning out of a dynasty to a rebuild and to have the foundation in place in 2 years. I mean, it's just further, not that she needed that, that reassurance, but it just further solidifies that she's one of the best to ever do it. And she's also just a
100%.
great personality too to deal with.
She's the GOAT. I mean, yeah, that's the glue. That's the thing. Watching what teams start. I remember this during COVID because I watched every game during those years and all of them before. You start a season, this season too. Who were they? 0-6, 0-7? Who are they today? That's not just because everybody got better as basketball players. Sure. She will change. She will make it work. She'll figure it out. I remember people saying at 0-7, oh, they're tanking to get a draft pick. I'm like, that is an uneducated way to think about a Cheryl Reeve basketball team. You don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. She doesn't do that. That's like saying Lindsay Whalen would tank a game. You got to be kidding me. She can't. It wouldn't be possible. Like,
yeah, I know.
There's too much competitive drive.
Right. She even said at the beginning of the year, like, if anybody's thinking we're tanking, I'm not the right person for this job. I shouldn't be in this job. And that's Cheryl. That is Cheryl. True.
But, right. Yeah. That's not who she is. And so that's fun to watch too. And I like that about the women's game is you can see the minds working throughout. And again, I mean, as that Lynx dynasty had its place and it was just incredible to witness. My colleagues still make fun of me because after the one they won at the barn, they let me do my whole show walking in a parade with them. They were like, we thought that you were definitely on some sort of controlled substance. You were yelling a lot. You were wearing everybody's jersey with the, I'm like, yeah. And I also don't ascribe to, so, some of your listeners, that's fine. I can take it. I'm 45. I'm not going to pretend I'm not a fan. Hell yeah, I am. You watch them play basketball? Of course I am. I'm a sports fan. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I have to be unbiased. The Lynx, I'm not. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not a beat writer. So yeah, I don't remember what I'm saying, but it's been interesting to watch what she does with each group of women. And again, the W has such a different load. Lindsay and I talked about this yesterday, looking at the bajillion newspaper covers in her basement, and a couple were from Turkey. And I asked her about her time there and talked about, when Lindsay was playing overseas, we all know it was a necessity then if you wanted to make any money. And those women played 11, 12 months. We're now at a space where a lot of women are opting not to play. They're starting to be more like the American professional athlete where they don't have to do that all the time. But when they do that, and a lot of them still do, they're literally coming off an airplane the night before their first game in the W. That's not how other sports work. So it takes time on the front end. And that has been a frustration for coaches like Cheryl and GMs like Cheryl. Like, how do you start a year like that when your star players literally are just coming off an airplane or the Olympic break, right? It's just right in the middle of the season. Like, okay, everybody's going to leave and we'll be back later. Bye. Yeah. It's just not treated the same. And I hope that respect comes from everywhere, from how they get to travel to when their schedule is, to how many teams there are. I mean, yeah, like you said, we could talk about that. It's bonkers to me when you look at who gets cut off the roster. You're like, oh my gosh. I mean, who was the person from Iowa? Oh, geez, I can see her
Gustafson?
face.
Megan Gustafson? Is that who you're thinking of?
The center on Caitlin Clark's team who didn't make a team, Cisnano.
Oh yeah. Yes. Yep.
I mean, we watched her in the tournament. I was like, oh my gosh, I want that girl. She couldn't even get on a team.
Yeah. It's crazy too, because a lot of those teams, like the Lynx, they carry 11 players. Or normally carry 11 players. And that, I mean, you only have 12 spots, and now you're limiting it to 11 because that's however many players you can fit within the salary cap most often, or more often than not. And I mean, that it's insane that and you look at the talent, like you said earlier, the talent that's coming into the league, or that is going to be coming into the league in the next year or two, just to think about how they're going to fit in there. It's like they have to do something, and I hope it's soon. And it's been a long road to get even to this point, but I hope it's finally soon.
Me too. It's just unfair to those players. I mean, it's not like you can, being a professional athlete isn't like being an accountant. You can't really sit out for 5 years and be the same basketball player at 30 that you were at 25.
Right.
You got to you seize the moments.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. Do you have a favorite basketball player or Lynx player that it could be any basketball player that you've enjoyed watching the most throughout your time as a fan?
Different seasons, I definitely would be into different people. 2 years ago, I mean, Lasia Clarendon for reasons of I likes he's like we had lots of things in common, and I like the way she played ball. That was my favorite for a while. On that destiny, I mean, again, it goes back to this like parallel relationship I had in my heart. I'm not saying Lindsay shared this, but Lindsay Whalen will always be really special to watch all of that over time. And it feels like, aging. I can like look at her career and remember where I was. Like I can tell you where I was when I came out and where Lindsay was in her career. I just like life moments, and I remember where she landed. So I think Whalen will always just be really special to me. I've never seen a person play basketball in person like Maya Moore. Never, ever. I don't know that I ever will. It was beautiful. It was just beautiful, beautiful basketball. I remember my wife would make fun of me. I would just laugh. Like it was that joyous, like what they would create out there. And I was like, I can't believe how beautiful this passing game is. Like it's just uncanny. I am definitely a homer, so I didn't watch enough of other people. I mean, there were opponents. I told Lindsay yesterday that I will never forgive Diana Taurasi for beating us at the Final Four. I won't, and I get it. She's good. Whatever. I can't deal. I know but so other teams, meh. No, thank you.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, as you were just talking about that, it's crazy to think all the moments throughout Lynx history, even just in the last decade, that it's just, you look back on it, it's like, wow, that was quite a run. That was quite a stretch. And just the ebbs and flows and the top moments that took place, it's just endless. It's
every
crazy.
game. I mean, it was just such a blessing and privilege to watch them play together. I mean, you don't know what you got till it's gone. And I never like to be one that looks into the past. I want to have a changed mindset, but it really was beautiful. And I'm just blessed that I got to see it. It's kind of like getting to see, art while it's happening. And we live in a time where you fill in the blank of the artist that moves you. And those basketball teams moved me. From inspiration, I remember very vividly that moment when Alton Sterling was killed right after Philando Castillo. And this is pre-Colin Kaepernick, when our Minnesota Lynx wanted to do something and say something. And it was through conversations that coach had with them. And then they said they wanted to do it. And there was no pushback and no owner say you can't do this. They did it. And they were unpopular with a lot of people in Minnesota at that time, but they did it first because they believed in it. And I remember that press conference. I remember where they sat and what they said. I remember Rebecca Brunson, and I remember just like that palpable feeling like that they just, as Black women, many of the majority Black women on that panel that night, sans Lindsay, like there was no option to stay silent. And the amount of courage it takes for being a group of people that is mocked as professional female athletes, and you knew you were going to get it, but they didn't care because they always cared about doing the right thing. And as a parent, I feel that even more so now, that like when people say, do you want your son to play X sport or do X thing? I'm like, man, I hope he just is a good person and is empathic and makes this world a little bit better than he found it, no matter what the cost it is to him. And that team did that when I would watch them.
That's one
it
thing.
Sounds cheesy and that like I'm giving too much power to athletes, but that's what they did for me. They inspired me to be better.
Oh yeah. And that's, that's one thing that, that even the jerseys that they have this year, their new jerseys, it's, the change starts with us, and all of that kind of brought into jersey form. But that's what you think of when you think of that team too. It's not the greatness that was on the court, but it's also off the court. Everything that they did with their voices, all the change that they brought to the limelight, that to me is almost more impressive and
100%.
more important than a game.
And it's why it never will matter to me that if they go 500, it would never matter to me. They're my favorite team forever and ever and ever. That will not change. They have my undying support. Lindsay and I were talking last night, and after she was like, do you go to all the games still? And I'm like, well, But I told her, I was like, and she's like, me neither. I really like to hang out in my basement. We're in our mid-40s. But I would, she's like, well, I was like, well, I'd go with you. Um, but that's the thing. I'm like, but I would give them all my money and watch every game and do all I can. And I can't wait. And I think next season is going to be it. My kid's going to be old enough where I think I can take him because the environment is so awesome.
It is.
And it's so fun. And I'll cry just thinking about it. I've already looked. I'm like, do they have Lynx jerseys for like 1.5-year-olds? Why not? That's the sporting experience I'm just giddy for him to be a part of because I get so much, and his mom too, on our first date. And she is not an athlete. She's an English professor, but she's fascinated by women's sports in terms of like academic things that I don't even understand. But, she has all the love for Rebecca Brunson. Like, and that's always going to be her favorite player. And that makes sense to me because my wife is a hard worker and she's kind of quiet and she just doesn't need the limelight. She's just going to go in there and do the things that need to get done for her team to be the best. And that's who Laura is to our family.
Mm-hmm.
And so for her, it's always Brunson.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. Well, Jana, I look forward to going to the State Fair and seeing the Lindsay Whalen introductory press conference as your co-host. And thank you for all that you do for women's sports, the Lynx, and in propelling all those voices, inside of sports and outside of sports. I told you this before. I'm a regular viewer, and I appreciate all you do and all the stories you do tell. It's all important work. So I appreciate you joining and for all that you do.
And thank you for doing this podcast and keeping, your eye on it. That's really cool. I mean, props to you. We need more of you and welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, thank
you
you again, and we'll talk soon.
Okay. Take care.
All right. Thank you once again to Jana for joining the podcast this week. Like I said at the beginning, it was great to get to talk to her about her career, about all the work that she does, what interests her. And some basketball. We dive into basketball. We dive into the Lynx. There's a lot of Minnesota ties and Lynx ties in that podcast. So I really appreciate Jana sitting down and talking to me. It was a great conversation. I think I probably could have talked to her for at least double what the podcast ended up being, or what the recording ended up being. But I really do appreciate her taking some time. So like I said, go check out Jana on KARE 11, breaking the news on social media. And everywhere else. It's a lot of great work that she does, and you don't want to miss any of it. So thanks again, Jana. I appreciate it. I also want to give a shout out to Jeremy Rushing for producing this podcast every week and doing a great job in the back end of things. Thank you, Jeremy, for all of your work and making sure that this podcast gets out on time, sounds great, and doing that on a weekly basis. So I really appreciate all of your work and teaming up with you to produce this podcast every week. I also want to bring to light our Patreon page. I talk about it every week, but patreon.com/hitting the hardwood. A lot of great work that's being done there on a daily basis. Every other day, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I should say, our patrons get a special newsletter. They get the weekly Wednesday newsletter that everyone else does, but they also get a special edition on Monday and Friday, starting the week and wrapping up the week. A lot of other great perks, exclusive content, that you get podcasts before anybody else. You get a discount at our Hitting the Hardwood store, 25% off on any orders. And you have the ability to submit feedback, tell me what you think, any suggestions you have. And like I said, you get content that you don't get anywhere else. I save some of my content for our Patreon page because they're giving back to me, so I want to give back to them. So please go check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/hitting the hardwood. Try a 7-day free trial, test it out, see what you think. And then if you like it, please consider signing up for one of the memberships. It's very cheap to do so, and it also ensures the longevity of this podcast and making sure that I can continue to keep doing what I'm doing. So anything you can do, I really appreciate your consideration and checking all of that out. I also mentioned our Hitting the Hardwood store. You can find that all on our social medias, on our website. Hitting the Hardwood store has a lot of great Hitting the Hardwood gear. We have T-shirts, sweatshirts, cutoffs, tank tops, I should say. You can get glasses, mugs. You can really get anything, hats, anything that you think of. You can get magnets, stickers, whatever you may think of. It has it on the Hitting Hardwood store. And if there's nothing, or if there's something on there that you think is missing, let us know. Email us at hittingthehardwood@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. Let us know if there's something even you want a special order. I can do special orders on anything that you would like. So please let us know and check out the Hitting the Hardwood store. I also want to give a shout out to our partners and our sponsors of the Hitting the Hardwood podcast, Better Edge and Homage. Better Edge, that's BETTOR edge.com. If you go check out betteredge.com/links and sign up using the promo code LYNX, that's LYNX, you get free $20 in free play to place any bets. But what Better Edge is you can go place bets on any sporting event, any sport that you can think of. I regularly do it on the WNBA. When the WNBA is not in season, I do it on other sports, do it on other leagues, and I really enjoy that platform, being able to compete against others, bet by myself, whatever that may be. Use their social kind of feature that they have in there, and kind of talk to other people and see what other people are doing, seeing what they're betting on, what are some interesting bets for the night. So please go check out betteredge.com. That's BETTOR edge.com. And the second one is Homage. Homage is HOMAGE. You can check them out at homage.com. Please go check all of their gear. They have a lot of great vintage gear. Sports. Their sports gear is phenomenal. Not only the WNBA but everything else. You can get Lynx specific gear. They have Lynx logo sweatshirts and T-shirts. You can get anything on any WNBA team you can think of. I have their Lynx sweatshirt, their Lynx T-shirt, and their kind of charcoal WNBA shirt, and I love all three of them. I'm definitely going to be buying more, and you should go check them out as well. And also find our posts on social media with a couple special links. If you go check out their links to Lynx gear, Minnesota Lynx gear, and WNBA gear, there's two different URLs or links there that you can click on. If you purchase anything through those links, you can, or that a portion of your purchase, it doesn't cost you anything extra, but a portion of your purchase comes back and supports Hitting the Hardwood. So please go check them out, homage.com, that's HOMAGE.com. I also just want to thank you all for listening. I want to give a shout out to all of you listeners every week. A lot of people are reaching out to me, telling me who they think they should be on the podcast, which I really appreciate. It helps me kind of seek out what you guys are looking for and who you want to hear from. So please continue to do that. And I also appreciate all of your kind words that you do share along the way. It's really appreciative, and I do this all for you listeners. And the people that want to get this content. So I appreciate you listening every week, reading all my content elsewhere, following me on social media, giving me feedback, and I really appreciate it. So we're about 3/4 of the way through the season. The Lynx are right in the heart of the playoff hunt, which is kind of hard to believe. We didn't think that would happen after their 0-6 start, but here they are, and kind of floating around that the 5, 6, 7, 8 range. They even have a chance of being a top 5 team here over the next week or two if they keep winning. But the Lynx are turning things around. They're playing well, and Nafisa Collier's playing out of her mind. The Lynx rookies continue to do well. Kayla McBride continues to do it all for Minnesota as a leader and on both ends of the court. Everybody's just kind of having a steady performance right now. So a lot of fun on the Lynx side of things, and that makes this podcast even better to host every week and to be able to talk about a team that's doing well and looking ahead to the future, which is very, very bright for this team. So once again, I want to thank you all for listening. Thank you all the listeners for listening. Please go like, subscribe, and find us on any platform that you get your podcasts. I really appreciate if you could go kind of give a review. Go on to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a review, give us a like, give us a follow. That goes a long way in kind of being able to share this podcast and continuing to improve it from here on out. So once again, thank you. I think I said it about 100 times, but thank you. And I will talk to you all next week. Have a great week, everybody.